Good morning. This is the Blaine's World webcast that can be found each week on Facebook, YouTube, and LinkedIn. You can also listen in on Spotify or Apple Podcasts. You get more information and find out about previous shows at my website, which is behind me, blainesworld.net. I'm your host, Blaine Greenfield, and I'm here in my Zoom studio in lovely downtown Fairview, North Carolina. Each week, we focus on positive news and information about people and organizations from Western North Carolina and throughout the country. And it's my pleasure to introduce tonight Hara Sitnick, owner of Order from Chaos, Asheville, for being my guest. And Hara, welcome aboard tonight. You can wave to all your friends and friends who are watching this. That is
Hi,
okay.
thanks for having me.
My pleasure. Hara is a personal organizer who loves to help people create order from chaos. Great title of the business. She lived in Asheville 48 years and moving here with a family from Miami. She was also an herbalist and worked professionally in holistic health for 25 years. Dancing is another of her many passions. And so the question I always ask Hara when I meet somebody for the first time is, as a kid, you grew up where was it?
Grew up in Miami, where I was born until I was 10, and then my family moved here.
Okay. And so when you were growing up in Miami as a kid, did you always know you wanted to be a personal organizer?
I did not.
I don't even think
However,
the field wasn't even around then, right? Nobody ever heard of it then.
probably not. However, I was always really organized, even as a kid.
Well, did you have, I bet it made your mom happy. Did you have any brothers and sisters?
I have two younger brothers, Adam and Jason, and they're both also here in the area.
Okay. And were you the organized one or how were they organized also?
No,
No?
they're not too bad, actually, but yeah, I'm the oldest, and you know how that goes.
And did you get it from your mom or how did you get it?
Yes, I'd say that I got it from my mom. My mom has always been really organized as well. Must have
Well,
picked it up from her.
let's talk about the concept then in terms of being organized. In your opinion, what does that mean?
Well, it means whatever works best for each individual. Being organized is different for everybody, and what might work for me may not work for you. Um, my goal whenever I work with clients is for them to feel more peace and flow and ease and lightness in their space, whether it's their home, office, kitchen. And I meet people where they're at, listen to what their goals are, and help create the space in a way that and systems that are going to help maintain it that will work well for them.
How does somebody know that they need your services?
Well, it's funny. I mention it a lot to people. I'm so passionate about it and I love to help people. And so I want to be of help if I can be. And pretty much everybody says, "Oh, I could use you." Um, so whenever people are feeling uncomfortable in some way in their own space, um, constantly not being able to find things, clutter around that always feels really unsettling to them. Um, just not being able to function with ease and flow in their own space.
What about if somebody's is really completely disorganized or what they call it, a clutterer or the TV,
Hoarder.
a hoarder? Have you worked with hoarders also?
Well, I get that question a lot. So I say hoarding because I'm not, clinically certified, and that is, when people are living with that kind of thing going on, there's a lot more going on, and they really need, to get some professional help for that. So that's a little bit out of my realm. I have worked though with some really disorganized spaces and lots and lots and lots of stuff. And I don't scare easy. I mean, I'll stand there, I'll listen to my client, I'll get the tour of the space, sometimes an entire home, and I'll just jump in. I have a process how I work. I'm a clusterer, so I cluster like with like. Um, and I try and I call it kind of being back at the house. And so my clients, usually they're feeling pretty overwhelmed, sometimes embarrassed, and just don't know even where to start or how to start. So I try and just, I face the project and then just give them kind of one thing at a time to do. Um, and yeah, I love doing it. I people have said that it's like magic.
Let me ask you this, in terms of working with somebody who their house is kind of disorganized and you help them out, is that something they can keep permanently, or is it something you need to have? I mentioned to you off there, like a checkup from neck up every
Yeah.
year or something. Look, once you get the habit or the procedures correct, can you maintain it the rest of your life? Do people do that?
Well, it depends. If you're a highly organized person like me, yes. Um, and for folks who that's more of a challenge, um, sometimes they can maintain it for a really long time. That's another thing that I help with is help create systems to maintain the order and the organization or the decluttering. Again, I have lots of tips and tricks. I've been doing this for 8 years professionally. And I've learned so much along the way. And yeah, of course, if we have space, it's going to get filled up. We live in it, things move around, and people do call me back for to zhuzh up their space again. And I also want to mention something else that I've again learned along the way. There's also kind of a clutter threshold. For some of us who are highly organized, we can have a lot of stuff and it's not overwhelming. Everything stays, pretty tidy and organized. For folks who have more of a challenge, I also work with folks who are living with ADHD, who are on the autism spectrum, who are living with some other neurodivergence. And it can be a little bit more challenging, kind of the more stuff we have, the more there is to manage. Um, so for folks who have, a harder time with that, I encourage them to have less stuff because then there's less for them to keep up with.
I guess the real key is also to encourage people to get rid of stuff, it's rather than just keep buying more stuff. Because I've heard, and I'll have you comment on this, Hara, but one of the big problems with people who do this on their own is they go to Staples and they buy 4,700 organizing boxes, things, whatnot, and just buying more stuff rather than less stuff. Does that happen?
Yeah, so a couple points there. I do encourage people to declutter or let go of things um, to start because then we know what we're organizing and we know what space we have. I do this very gently. I don't push anybody to get rid of anything. If they really want to hold on to something, then great, hold on to it. Um, and as far as containers and organizing things, I also don't ask people to go out and buy all of that stuff right off. I also am, very environmentally minded and invariably people have all kinds of vessels, bins, totes, baskets, a cereal box that can be repurposed into, holding files. So I try and use what people have first before they go out and spend money or buy more plastic. And and that's something else I cluster. So as I'm working, I have all of the empty vessels in one spot because never know where we might use them. And something else you said got me thinking. I also encourage people to be really mindful when they're out and about shopping or in stores. Um, and know that anything that they bring home, at some point they're going to have to find a spot for it, keep a spot for it, dust it, whatever. And so to be mindful and know that the less they bring in, the less there is to manage.
I love what you just said there, because it reminds me of kind of a criteria I have. I don't always follow it, but before you buy something, or if you buy an item of clothing, for example, that's okay, but then you have to get rid of something. You shouldn't
Yes.
just, for every one you get whatever. But where your services, I imagine, come really into need, or people could use your services, is especially when they have like older parents, or
Yes.
whatever. And I guess the real problem for some people, I fortunately never had to have this with my parents. But when their parents are older and then they pass, then they have to get rid of all their stuff. That's a real problem unto itself. And I guess, and it's where you come into play, I guess, if you can gently encourage them to think about this before they get to that point in time. But have you had to deal with some people like that, that parents pass, then you have to get rid of, you have to clean out the whole house?
Yes. I mean, I work with in all kinds of situations. I do small jobs to large jobs. I've done just a clothing closet, and it's just a one-time, organize this one closet, or an office, um, file papers, uh, digital content, emails. I love to help people move in, unpack boxes, and get their whole kitchen settled in. I've done garages, basements, storage units, entire homes. We go, kind of systematically through. And for all kinds of circumstances, definitely downsizing. I've worked with lots of folks who are downsizing, for one reason or another, whether they're moving from their home into a retirement community, um, or looking to lighten their load before their, children or loved ones, have to deal with all of their stuff, after they've passed on. And also sometimes I have worked with people who have had things passed down to them or passed on to them, or their kids have left the house and they've left all of their stuff and they're ready to, lighten their load that way.
And I've heard sort of the same kind of thing. Some parents won't get rid of their kids' stuff. That like you said, the kids left it and they're just holding on to it, but
Yeah.
the kids are never going to use it.
Well, I have, again, tips and tricks, ways that I can, I also want to make this process more gentle for people because I love it. I mean, I love to organize stuff. And a lot of, my clients obviously don't, or they wouldn't have hired me. Um, but I like I said, I try to make the process, as painless as possible, and we actually even have fun. Um, and one of my tips is if people have, a whole bunch of collections of something, or a bunch of their kids' stuff, or there are ways to hold on to those memories, but not necessarily the stuff. Take pictures of things, in the digital age, of course, we can, take pictures of things and just have the memories and then let go of items. So maybe stuffed animals that their kids had or whatever, or keep hold of, one from a set that was handed down from a grandparent and then let the rest go. So
Even that's a project as you're talking, I'm saying things I have to do now. And one, for example, the project, and this is where
well, I'm for hire. I'd love to be of help to
I
you,
love it,
Blaine.
and you might be at some point in time, because the project I can think of doing is photos, and like I still have um everything's now digital, but I can't find half of it. But worse than, I still must have 1,000 photos in the envelopes, that
Right.
I've
I
never
remember those.
can you believe it? There was time when
Yeah.
people you took them, but I've never processed them, so I know where they are. And is that a project you could help with, or
You know what I tell people?
what?
I will organize almost anything. I do have some limits, but pretty much I do. Yeah. And again, going through those systematically and, keeping the ones that you really love. I mean, in those days, we didn't know if it was going to be out of focus or we were going to cut the person's head off in the photo. So um yeah, just going through those. And there again, there's a couple of ways I work. I can work I've used the word systematically several times. That's generally how I like to work. And I also there's another way, I call it cherry picking, where people might just pull out, you know, photos, not go through every photo or every item in a project. And that can sometimes make it a little easier and maybe just get a start on a project.
Let me put you on the spot because you mentioned it. You said
Uh-oh.
you'll do almost any organizing project. Is there anyone you can think of that you turned down or that you wouldn't do?
Um,
Have you ever turned down a project?
yes. I have. I do like a free 15-minute phone
Sure.
consultation with potential clients, and that's a good way for us to see if it's a good fit. It may not be a project, it may be out of my realm, like you had asked earlier about, working in hoarding situations. That needs a very different, those situations, those folks need a different kind of help. Um, and just to see if it's a good fit for both of us, me and the potential client. And yeah, I can usually determine that in just a 15-minute, a quick chat on the phone.
Or I guess also you can determine, I don't necessarily want to discuss rates right now, but if somebody wants to use your services, but they don't want to pay for it, this is something, you just do it as a friend or, help me out, but you should be prepared that there's going to be a fee involved. And so I guess that's what you
Yeah.
discussed in the initial call. So if somebody wants to work with you, what's the process? They see this show or they heard about you from somebody else and what, they give you a call initially and then you,
Yes. Yeah, most of my like I was saying earlier to you, I'm not really a social media person. I don't do any advertising. Um, I do have a website that I've only had for like a year and a half. And my business is all word of mouth. I'm kind of old school. I have business cards that I really like. I like handing them out regardless of what people
but
do
by the
with
way,
them.
me too. I love the business card. I hate, on the phone or whatnot.
Yeah.
I still love my business cards.
Yeah.
And so they hear about you, they call you up and get a
Mhm.
15-minute appointment. And then how long I guess every situation is different, but how long does the process typically take? Or how do you determine that?
Great, another great question. So after we determine that it sounds like I can be of help, to the client and it feels like a good fit for them as well, we schedule time that works. I typically do a morning appointment and an evening or afternoon appointment. Um, 3 hours is the sweet spot, I have found. I can work a lot longer than that. I mean, I can do this a full day, stop for a bite midday and keep going. Um, but most folks, 3 hours is kind of enough. So that's typically what I schedule. If it sounds like it's a really big job and the client knows that it's going to take, multiple appointments, we may schedule, a couple, three appointments. Um, and sometimes we can just, schedule the one and then kind of go from there, see what more needs to be done. I do have repeat clients who call me back over the years.
They may, right?
Great.
No, but
And
as I
I
said,
love that. I love to work with people. I also have some clients that I work ongoing. I help them keep their emails organized, any other kind of digital content. And because then I really get to know people and their systems, or we've created systems together that really work, and I can help maintain those. So I love that as well. And oftentimes my clients become friends and friends become clients. So I love that, the referral.
what were you doing? And it seems I'll keep it in the back of my mind, but I think I mentioned to you off the air. The line was from a guy named Zig Ziglar. You ever hear of Zig Ziglar?
Yes.
Famous
Uh-huh.
motivational speaker. And it
Yeah.
seems what you do and do it very well. But he would tell about the need for a checkup from the neck up. So
Yeah.
even if you've worked with you in the past, so you're saying there's nothing wrong with calling you up again, that some people need to revisit this every so often?
Love it. I love it. I love working with, with clients ongoing. And when you make this, this quote from Zig Ziglar, that's another element of this. It can be it's very personal. It can be very emotional for folks. Like I said, they may feel overwhelmed, feel embarrassed, um, maybe even feel angry. They may feel sad about, letting things go or resistant to that. And so, I'm an herbalist and I was in holistic health professionally for 25 years, which was also, very personal, talking with people about their health and well-being and, sometimes very personal issues. And it's it's similar in that way. I mean, I'm in people's homes. I'm touching their stuff. I'm maybe encouraging them to let go of things. And I just, like I said, meet people where they're at, work very gently with people. It's a very personal um process.
The one thing I imagine you can really help people with, though, is the idea in terms of processing stuff. It's very impersonal from your standpoint. Like you were saying that my stuff, it's my stuff. I don't want to give it up. But if I ask you involved, you have no allegiance to anything I own. So I guess that's easier for you to get rid of something to get rid
Yeah.
of something than for me.
That's a good point. Yeah, I mean, I have no attachment to a client's things or how they organize or if they organize or if they let go of anything. Um, and regardless of what pace we work at, I work pretty quick. I often sometimes find that I have to kind of slow my pace down because my clients are the ones who are making the choices, doing the mental and emotional work of determining if they are going to keep something or let it go. And yeah, I'm a supporter, a helper, an encourager, a cheerleader. I like to celebrate when we actually have a success, no matter how small it is, because this can be a very big process for folks. So I like to celebrate when we have accomplishments and yeah, and support in letting go of things and organizing in a way that works for my clients because at the end of it I'm gonna walk out the door and I want it to really work for them.
Let me put you on the spot and let's consider any particular item somebody has in a house. Maybe it was a little thing they got as a gift or something in their living room. Is there any easy way to ask or consider the questions you should consider before you give something up? If you have people used to have ashtrays, you have a
Yeah.
ashtray that your father used and you've always kept it.
Yeah.
What kinds of questions do you ask before you give it up?
Well, you mentioned gifts, and that's
Okay.
definitely something I you know, with work with clients on. They have been given gifts and it's not necessarily something that they
Right.
want and they are looking to lighten their load. So, and I think I'm trying to remember where I learned this piece of information. I want to give credit if I believe it was actually Marie Kondo. And I started doing this way before I read any of her books.
By the way, I didn't want to mention her because that's what my wife does. She was so impressed with her book, she drives me crazy. But twice a year, she'll condoing. She'll go through the house,
Uh-huh.
and we have nothing left. But same thing too. So go ahead with what you
Yeah.
learned from the
So
condo.
anyway, when a gift is given and a gift is received, the love, the care, the appreciation, the friendship or relationship has been has been honored. And that loved one wouldn't want you to keep something that you weren't, that wasn't really,
Right.
enhancing your space or your life. So I tell people it's okay to let that go. I also, you know, I'm not a feng shui practitioner, and I have, studied feng shui, and it makes sense to me that how we move through our space, um, and if there are things in our space that are either in our way, have a negative memory, a difficult memory, or something that we just don't like, but it was our grandparents or whatever, I say let that item go or move that thing, or you know, because it's blocking the flow of energy in our lives. And again, there are ways to do that. Offer that ashtray or item to a family member. If they don't want it, then you can always take a picture of it and then let that item go. I
Great idea.
also I also encourage people to, or if it's like a whole set, like I said earlier, keep one item. And I mean, I have things for my grandmother, and I just keep, a couple of items from that set and let the rest go. And I also encourage people that, I have some places that I donate, local places that, Homeward Bound is a favorite, and they just do such, beautiful work in our community, um, and that somebody else may have use of that who doesn't have that many things. And even working with kids, letting go of toys if they have an overabundance of toys, which so many kids have, maybe a child who doesn't have as many toys would enjoy that.
You'll get a kick out of this, but we donate to an organization called Arms Around ASD. It's an
Yep.
autism group. And my wife, it's so funny, she'll donate clothing. They have a clothing store
Mhm.
there. And then she'll see the clothing, she'll see the item, 6 months later and say, geez, that looks nice,
Yeah.
if she's ever bought it back. But that's kind of the thing that I guess people are prone to. Final question. I don't know if my producer mentioned this to you. But do you have you could show us any before and after pictures, or do you have anything handy that you could show us
Oh, so I don't. She
on
did
the
mention
website?
it. She did mention it to me. And in terms of the technology here on this call, I do have a whole gallery on my website of before and after pictures, with permission, and there's no identifying features. I'm very, very mindful about that. Even as an herbalist, it was HIPAA. I don't maintain people's privacy, and so certainly I've done that. And people can see those before and after pictures on my
And
website.
if I can, the website is what?
It is orderfromchaosasheville.com.
Okay. And so that's the thing, a great thing to take a look at because you'll have me look at this now as well. So if folks want to get in touch with you, and that's probably the best bet, to go to the website and they'll find out all the key information.
Yes, that's a great way to get in touch with me. I think it's called a light box that pops up. I've only had the website for like a year and a half, so that was really new to me. And they can email me there, or they can email me at hara.sitnick@gmail.com. It's hara.sitnick@gmail.com.
And since you mentioned it earlier, I'll have you give one final shout out to your mom. You said you got a lot of this from, you want to say hello to your mom, or if she's
I
watching,
would,
what's
oh my
this?
gosh, I would love to. Hi,
Six.
Mom.
Okay,
And
well,
I will also say that this is something else that I invariably work into some conversation. Every conversation is my mom is Lenny Sitnick. And for folks who have been in Asheville for some period of time, she was the first woman mayor of Asheville from 98 to '02. And she's still here in her beloved Asheville, and she's awesome.
great. Well, anyway, thanks for mentioning that. I'd also like to thank you for being my guest on this show, and also my producer, Cappy Tassetti. And hopefully we'll actually get to meet someday in person as opposed to via Zoom. But thanks very much. This was a lot of fun and you were great. Thank you.
Thanks, Blaine.